Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and One Night. Now, when it was the 303rd night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Abu Mohammed Lazybones continued. So I alighted, and saluting him, seated myself beside him, and my Mamelukes and negro slaves stood before me. Said the Sharif, Haply thou hast some business with us, which we may pleasure of transacting. Replied I, Yes, I have business with thee. Asked he, And what is it? And I answered, I come to thee as a suitor for thy daughter's hand. So he said, Thou hast neither cash, nor rank, nor family. Whereupon I pulled him out a purse of 1,000 dinars, red gold, and said to him, This is my rank and my family. And he, whom Allah bless and keep, has said, The best ranks is wealth. And how well, quoth the poet. Whoso 2 dirhams hath his lip have learnt, speech of all kinds with eloquence belight. Draw near his brethren, and crave air of him, and him thou seest hot in prideful height. Were not the dirhams wherein glories he has found him mid mankind in sorrow plight? When Richard errs in words, they all reply, Sooth, thou hast spoken and hast said aright. When Pauper speaketh truly, all reply, Thou liest, and they hold him sayings light. Verily, dirhams in earth's every stead clothe men with rank and make them fair to sight. Gold is the very tongue of eloquence. Gold is the best arms for wight who'd fight. Now, when the Sharif heard these my words and understood my verse, he bowed his head awhile groundwards, then raising it said, If it must be so, I will have of thee another 3,000 gold pieces. I hear and I obey, answered I, and I sent one of my Mamelukes home for the money. As soon as he came back with it, I handed it to the Sharif, who, when he saw it in his hands, rose and bidding his servant shut his shop, invited his brother's merchants of the bazaar to the wedding. After which he carried me to his house and wrote out my contract of marriage with his daughter, saying to me, After 10 days I will bring thee to pay her the first visit. So I went home, rejoicing, and shutting myself up with the ape, and told him what had passed, and he said, Thou hast done well. Now, when the time appointed by the Sharif drew near, the ape said to me, There is a thing I would have thee do for me, and thou shalt have of me, when it is done, whatso thou wilt. I asked, What is that? And he answered, At the upper end of the chamber wherein thou shalt meet thy bride, the Sharif's daughter stands a cabinet, on whose door is a ring padlock of copper, and the keys under it. Take the keys and open the cabinet, in which thou shalt find a coffer of iron with 4 flags, which are talismans, at its corners, and in its midst stands a brazen basin full of money, wherein is tied a white cock with a cleft comb, while on one side of the coffer are 11 serpents, and on the other a knife. Take the knife and slaughter the cock. Cut away the flags and upset the chest. Then go back to the bride and do away her maidenhead. This is what I have to ask of thee. Hearkening and obedience, answered I, and betook myself to the house of the Sharif. So as soon as I entered the bride chamber, I looked for the cabinet, and found even as the ape had described it. Then I went into the bride, and marveled at her beauty, and loveliness, and stature, and symmetrical grace, for indeed they were such as no tongue can set forth. I rejoiced in her with exceeding joy, and in the middle of the night, when my bride slept, I rose, and taking the keys, opened the cabinet. Then I seized the knife, slew the cock, and threw down the flags, and upset the coffer. Whereupon the girl awoke, and seeing the closet open and the cock with cut throat, exclaimed, There is no majesty, and there is no might, save in Allah, the glorious, the great. The Marid hath got hold of me. Hardly had she made an end of speaking, when the Marid swooped down upon the house, and snatching up the bride, flew away with her. Whereupon there arose a mighty clamor, and behold, in came the Sharif, buffeting his face and crying, O Abu Mohammed, what is this deed thou hast done? Is it thus thou requitest us? I made this talisman in the cabinet, fearing for my daughter from this accursed one, who for these 6 years hath sought to steal away the girl, but could not. But now there is no more abiding for thee with us, so wend thy ways. Thereupon I went forth, and returned to my own house, where I made search for the ape, but could not find him, nor any trace of him. whereby I knew that it was he who was the Marid, and that he had carried off my wife and had tricked me into destroying the talisman and the cock and the two things which hindered him from taking her. And I repented, rending my raiment and cuffing my face. And there was no land but was straitened upon me. So I made for the desert forthright, and ceased not wandering on till night overtook me. For I knew not whither I was going, and whilst I was deep in sad thought, behold, I met two serpents, one tawny and the other one white, and they were fighting to kill each other. So I took up a stone, and with one cast slew the tawny serpent, which was the aggressor, whereupon the white serpent glided away, and was absent for a while. But presently she returned, accompanied by 10 other white serpents, which glided up to the dead serpent and tore her in pieces, so that only the head was left. Then they went their ways, and I fell prostrate for weariness on the ground where I stood. But as I lay pondering my case, lo, I heard a voice, though I saw no one, and the voice versified with these two couplets. Let fate with slack bridle fare her pace, nor pass the night with mind which cares an ace. Between eye closing and its opening, Allah can foulest change to fairest case. Now, when I heard this, O Commander of the Faithful, great concern gat hold of me, and I was beyond measure troubled. And behold, I heard a voice from behind me extemporize these couplets. O Muslim, thou whose guide is alicorn, joy is what brought safe peace to thee, O man. Fear not what Satan happily whispered thee, and in us see a truth-believing clan. Then said I conjure thee by the truth of him who worshippeth us, let us know who thou art. Thereupon the invisible speaker assumed the form of a man and said, Fear not, for the report of thy good deed hath reached us, and we are a people of the true believing jinn. So if thou lack aught, let us know, that we may have the pleasure of fulfilling thy want. Quoth I, Indeed, I am in sore need, for I am afflicted with a grievous affliction, and no one was ever afflicted as I am. Quoth he, Perchance thou art Abu Mohammed Lazybones? And I replied, Yes. He rejoined, O Abu Mohammed, am the brother of the white serpent, whose foe thou slewest. We are 4 brothers by one father and mother, and we are all indebted to thee for thy kindness. And know thou that he played his trick on thee in the likeness of an ape, is a Marid of the Marids of the jinn, and had he not used this artifice, he had never been able to get that girl, for he hath loved her and had a mind to take her this long while. But he was hindered of that talisman, and had it remained as it was, he could never have found access to her. However, fret not thyself for that. We will bring thee to her and kill the Marid, for thy kindness is not lost upon us. Then he cried out with a terrible outcry, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 304th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Ifrit continued, Verily, thy kindness is not lost upon us. Then he cried out with a terrible outcry and a horrible voice, and behold, there appeared a troop of the jinn, of whom he inquired concerning the ape. And one of them said, I know his abiding place. And the other said, Where abideth he? Said the speaker, He is in the city of brass, whereon sun riseth not. Then said the first jinn to me, O Abu Mohammed, take one of these our slaves, and he will carry thee on his back, and teach thee how then thou shalt get back the girl. But when that this slave is a Marid of the Marids, and beware, while he is carrying thee, lest thou utter the name of Allah, or he will flee from thee, and thou wilt fall and be destroyed. I hear, and I obey, answered I. And I chose out one of the slaves, who bent down and said to me, Mount. So I mounted on his back, and he flew up with me into the firmament, till I lost sight of the earth, and saw the stars, as they were the mountains of earth fixed and firm, and heard the angels crying, Praise be to Allah and heaven, while the Marid held me in converse, diverting me and hindering me from pronouncing the name of Almighty Allah. But as we flew, behold, one clad in green raiment, with streaming tresses and radiant face, holding in his hand a javelin whence flew sparks of fire, accosted me, saying, "O Abu Mohammed, say, there is no God, but the God Mohammed is the apostle of God, or I will smite thee with this javelin." Now already I felt heartbroken by my forced silence as regards calling on the name of Allah. So I said, "There is no God but the God, and Mohammed is the apostle of God." Whereupon the Shining One smote the Marid with his javelin, and he melted away and became ash, whilst I was thrown from his back and fell headlong towards the earth, till I dropped into the midst of dashing sea, swollen with clashing surge. And behold, I fell hard by a ship with 5 sailors therein, who seeing me made for me, and took me up into the vessel. And they began to speak to me in some speech that I knew not, but I signed to them that I understood not their speech. So they fared on till the last of the day, when they cast out a net and caught a great fish, and they broiled it and gave me to eat. After which they ceased not sailing on till they reached their city, and carried me to their king and set me in his presence. So I kissed ground before him, and he bestowed on me a dress of honor, and said to me in Arabic, which he knew well, "I appoint thee one of my officers." Thereupon I asked him the name of the city, and he replied, "It is called Hanad, and is in the land of China." Then he committed me to his wazir, bidding him show me the city where was formerly peopled by infidels, till Almighty Allah turned them into stone, and there I abode a month's space, diverting myself with viewing the place, nor saw I ever greater plenty of trees and fruits than there. And when this time had passed, one day, as I sat on the bank of a river, behold, there accosted me a horseman, who said to me, "Art thou not Abu Mohammed Lazybones?" "Yes," answered I. Whereupon he said, "Fear not, for the report of thy good deeds hath reached us." Answered I, "Who art thou?" And he answered, "I am a brother of the White Serpent, and thou art hard by the place where is the damsel whom thou seekest." So saying, he took off his clothes and clad me therein, saying, "Fear not, for the slave who perished under this was one of our slaves." Then the horseman took me behind him and rode on with it to the desert place, where he said, "Dismount now, and walk on between these 2 mountains till thou seest the city of brass, and then halt afar off, and enter it not, ere I return to thee and tell thee how thou shalt do it." "To hear is to obey," replied I, and dismounting from behind, walked on till I came to the city, the walls whereof I found of brass. Then I began to pace round about, hoping to find a gate, but found none. And presently, as I persevered, behold, the serpent's brother rejoined me, and gave me a charmed sword, which should hinder any from seeing me, and then went his way. Now he had been gone but a little while, when lo, I heard a noise of cries, and found myself in the midst of a multitude of folks whose eyes were in their breasts. And seeing me, quoth they, "Who art thou, and what cast thee into this place?" So I told them my story, and they said, "The girl thou seekest is in this city with the Marid, but we know not what he hath done with her. Now we are brethren of the White Serpent," adding, "Go thou to yonder spring, and note where the water entereth, and enter thou with it, for it will bring thee into the city." I did as they bade me, and followed the water course till it brought me to a sarib, a vaulted room under the earth, from which I ascended and found myself in the midst of the city. Here I saw the damsel seated upon a throne of gold, under a canopy of brocade, girt round by a garden full of trees of gold, whose fruits were jewels of price, such as rubies and chrysolites, pearls and coral. And the moment she saw me, she knew me, and accosted me with the Moslem salutation, saying, "O my lord, who guided thee hither?" So I told her all that had passed, and she said, "Know that the accursed Marid, of the greatest of his love for me, hath told me what bringeth him bane, and what bringeth him gain, and that here is a talisman by means whereof he could, and he would, destroy the city and all that are therein, and whoso possesseth it, the Ifrits will do his commandment in everything. It standeth under a pillar." Whereat I asked her, "And where is the pillar?" And she answered, It is in such a place. And what manner of thing may the talisman be? Said I. Said she, It is in the semblance of a vulture, and upon it is a writing which I cannot read. So go thou thither, and seize it, and set it before thee, and taking a chafing dish, throw it into it a little musk, whereupon there will arise a smoke, which will draw the Ifrits to thee, and they will all present themselves before thee. Nor shall one be absent. Also, they shall be subject to thy word, and whatso thou biddest them, that will they do. Arise, therefore, and fall to this thing with the blessing of the Almighty Allah. I answered, hearkening in obedience, and going to the column did as she bade me, whereupon the Ifrits all presented themselves before me, saying, Here we are, O Lord. Whatsoever thou biddest us, thou wilt we do. Quoth I, Bind the Marid who brought the damsel hither from her home. Quoth they, We hear and obey. And off they flew, and bound that Marid in the straitest bonds, and returned after it a while, saying, We have done thy bidding. Then I dismissed them, and repairing to my wife, told her what had happened. And said she, O my bride, wilt thou go with me? Yes. Yes, answered she. So I carried her forth of the vaulted chamber, whereby I had entered the city, and we fared on till we fell in with the folk who had shown me the way to find her. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 305th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that he continued on this wise, and we fared on till we fell in with the folk who had shown me the way to her. So I said to them, Point me out a path which shall lead me to my home. And they did accordingly, and brought us afoot to the seashore, and set us aboard a vessel, which sailed on before us with a fair wind till we reached Basra city. And when we entered the house of my father-in-law and her people, and saw my wife, they rejoiced with exceeding joy. Then I fumigated the vulture with musk, and lo, the Ifrits flocked to me from all sides, saying, At thy service, what wilt thou have us do? So I bade them transport all that was in the city of brass, of monies and noble metals and stones of price, to my house in Basra, which they did. And I then ordered them to bring me the ape. They brought him before me abject and contemptible, and I said to him, O accursed, why hast thou dealt thus perfidiously with me? Then I commanded the Ifrits to shut him in a brazen vessel. So they put him in a brazen kirkabit, and sealed it with lead. But I abode with my wife in joy and delight. And now, O Commander of the Faithful, I have under my hand precious things in such measure, and rare jewels, and other treasures and monies on such wise, as neither reckoning may express, nor may my limits comprise. And if thou lust after wealth or aught else, I will command the jinn at once to do thy desire. But all this is of the bounty of Almighty Allah. Thereupon the Commander of the Faithful wondered greatly, and bestowed on him imperial gifts in exchange for his presence, and entreated him with the favor he deserved. And men also tell the tale of the generous dealings of Yahya bin Khalid the Barmecide with Mansur. It is told that Harun al-Rashid, in the days before he became jealous of the Barmecides, sent once for one of his guards, Salya by name, and said to him, O Salya, go to Mansur, and say to him, Thou owest us 1,000 dirhams, and we require of thee immediate payment of this amount. And I command thee, O Salya, unless he pay it between this hour and sundown, sever his head from his body and bring it to me. To hear is to obey, answered Salya, and going to Mansur, acquainted him with what the Caliph had said, whereupon quoth he, I am a lost man by Allah, for all my estate and all my hand owneth, if sold for their utmost value, would not fetch me a price of more than 100,000 dirhams. Whence then, O Salya, shall I get the other 9,000? Salya replied, Contrive how thou mayest speedily acquit thyself, else thou art a dead man, for I cannot grant thee an eye-twinkling of delay after the time appointed me by the Caliph, nor can I fail of aught which the Prince of the True Believers hath enjoined on me. Hasten therefore to devise some means of saving thyself ere the time expire. Quoth Mansur, O sire, I beg thee of thy favour to bring me to my house, that I may leave of my children and family, and give my kinsfolk my last injunctions. Now Saya related, So I went with him to his house, where he fell to bidding his family farewell, and the house was filled with a clamour of weeping and lamentations, and calling for help on Almighty Allah. Thereupon I said to him, I have bethought me that Allah may happily vouchsafe thee relief at the hands of the Barmecides. Come, let us go to the house of Yahya bin Khalid. So we went to Yahya's house, and Mansur told him his case, whereat he was sore concerned, and bowed him groundwards for a while. Then raising his head, he called his treasurer, and said to him, How much have we in our treasury? A matter of 5,000 dirhams, answered the treasurer. And Yahya bade him bring them, and send a servant to his son Al-Fazil, saying, I am offered for sale a splendid estate, which may never be laid waste. So send me somewhat of money. Al-Fazil sent him 1,000 dirhams, and he dispatched a messenger with a like message to his son Jafar, saying, We have a matter of much moment, for it we want money. Whereupon Jafar at once sent him 1,000 dirhams. Nor did Yahya leave sending to his kinsmen of the Barmecide till he had collected from them a great sum of money for Mansur. But Salah and the debtor knew not of this, and Mansur said to Yahya, O my lord, I have laid hold upon thy skirt, for I know not whither to look for the money but to thee, in accordance with thy wonted generosity. So discharge thou the rest of my debt for me, and make me a free slave. Thereupon Yahya hung down his head and wept. Then he said to a page, Hark ye, boy, the commander of the faithful gave our slave girl Dananur a jewel of great price. Go thou to her and bid her send it to us. The page went out and presently returned with the jewel, whereupon quoth Yahya, O Mansur, I brought this jewel of the merchant for the commander of the faithful at a price of 200,000 dinars, and he gave it to the slave girl Danir, the lute player, and when he sees it with thee, he will know it, and spare thy blood, and do thee honour for our sake. And now, O Mansur, verily thy money is complete. Saya continued, So I took the money and the jewel, and carried them to Al-Rashid together with Mansur, but on the way I heard him repeat this couplet, applying it to his own case. 'Twas not of love that fared my feet to them, 'twas that I feared me lest they shoot their shafts. Now when I heard this, I marvelled at his evil nature, and his depravity, and mischief-making, and his ignoble birth, and his province, and turning upon him I said, There is none on the face of the earth better or more righteous than the Barmecides, nor any baser nor more wrongous than thou. For thou brought thee off from death, and delivered thee from destruction, giving thee what should save thee. Yet thou thankest them not, nor praisest them, neither acquittest thee after the manner of the noble, nay, thou meetest their benevolence with this speech. Then I went to Al-Rashid, and acquainted him with all that had passed. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my tale for the day, till it be morrow.